What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 140 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking UFC Vegas 76 being main evented by Sean Strickland. And for some reason, Abus Magomedov, we're just going to call him Abus or Abu just for simplistic sake. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know. It's an okay card. I don't think it's a great card for betting. We were just discussing it. Before we jump in, guys, if you could drop a like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. It would help us out a lot. And yeah, before we talk about this card, I guess we should jump into our results from last week. Shitty night for me. Minus 4.51 units overall. Would have been profitable had Jamal Emmers gotten the nod. And honestly, I would probably make that bet at minus 174 again. I thought he won 30-27 or 20-28 at the worst, but is what it is. You live and you learn. I had Neil Magny for 1.5 units. Got lucky there. Not so lucky in the decision, but I don't think it was a particularly great bet after seeing the fight. I had Jillian Robertson for 2 units at plus 114. It was a close fight. I thought she'd be more proactive about the takedowns. I thought she'd have a bit more success on top. Don't really have any regrets because, just didn't know how that fight would play out, but it was competitive, so it is what it is. I had a unit on David Onama, plus 190. Obviously, that was a good bet. Not much to say there. And then I had a unit on Josh Emmett, and I had 0.25 units on his KO. Terrible bet. I don't really regret the process that went into placing it. But yeah, I mean, masterclass by Topuria. A guy answered a load of questions that I had. Honestly, the only guys at this point in the division I'd favor against him are Volkanovski and Holloway. So, yeah, I mean, props to Topuria. Really, really great performance. How did you do, Lags? Oh, also, hold on. I hit over 2.5 plus 110 on the Randy Brown fight. I did hit. And then
nice.
One of the worst juicy unders I've ever bet. Cody Brundage versus Cedric Demas. Under 1.5 minus 153. Total clusterfuck. How did you do?
Yeah, I guess we'll start right there. So I also had a bad night as well, minus 3.71 units. And starting there, I had the under 1.5 in that fight. As soon as Cody jumped guard twice or jumped for guillotine twice, I'm like, this is dead. This is absolutely dead in the water. And Dumas not doing a ton on top wasn't great either, but again, dead in the water. That also killed the violence parlay that I had for 2 units. I had 2 units on the over 2.5 rounds in the Emmers-Jenkins fight. Thought that was a pretty good bet, minus 155. Had a unit on Peak, minus 110. Bad bet. Honestly, just underrated. Mariscal on short notice. And then I had a unit on the main event ending in KO, minus 110. I don't know. I think it was unfortunate to not cash. I'm not going to call it a bad beat, but just
I would say it was unfortunate. Yeah.
I mean, I think the doctor, if he actually, opened his eyes a little bit, might have stopped it in between 3 and 4 or 4 and 5. But yeah, is what it is. We're on this week. Hopefully, get some of that back. But again, like we talked about, not a great betting card, so don't need to force your hands here.
Yeah, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. It's been a weird first half of the year for me. I think for Q1 I was minus 25 units. I think I'm minus 12 units now, so it was like plus 13 units the last 3 months, which is good, but we got a lot of work. We got some ground to make up for here. We gotta start doing some damage. And while it's not a great betting card, I don't mind the spots I have found. So we'll hop right into it. First fight of the night, Guram Kutateladze, Elvis Brenner. I'll throw it to you first, Lags. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I do have a spot on this fight. I actually like the over 2.5 rounds, minus 125 for a unit. I think this is pretty much like a lower-ish, tepid kind of kickboxing fight. Guram, it would be smart to mix in takedowns for sure. We don't see that a ton from him, though. I mean, I just expect this to be Guram fairly outclassing him on the feet. I think Brenner could keep up on volume a little bit, but I mean, I think he's pretty hittable. I think it should be easy work for Guram.
Yeah, honestly, I like that overprice. I actually might tell you on that. I'm kind of tempted by Brenner. I don't feel passionately about it. I'm trying to avoid like dart throws like this, so I probably won't actually hit it. But I guess my thinking is, yes, Guram's better everywhere. I think we both agree with that. He's minus 600 for a reason. He's obviously the more skilled fighter in every realm. But with that said, look, he's an excellent defensive grappler, so he's going to keep it upright. But he's not a very good offensive grappler. In terms of his striking, look, he's way better, but his game is it's very low volume and it's very kick heavy. So he doesn't really land many head strikes. If you go back to the Gamrot fight, I think Gamrot outlanded him 2-1 to the head, which again, that's an impressive victory. And so is a close fight with Damir. I'm not saying he's not the better fighter here, but I think his process of being low volume combined with not offensively grappling, and not throwing many head strikes against the guy whose only real skill is being busy is kind of a recipe for the margins in this fight being a lot closer than how they're being priced. Again, I'm not sure I'll hit it. I think if it got to plus 500, I'd take a very small poke at it. I think Brenner's terrible. Like Guram should be fine, but you know what I mean, though, right? It's like Guram.
Yeah, go for it.
Guram style inherently doesn't lend itself to like huge minus numbers, you know?
I think if I was just looking to make those kind of like dart throws, again, not saying you are or not, but I feel like
it is a dart throw.
Yeah, I would say I would more so take like the smaller pokes on like his decision and like a split decision, like for even real small stakes. I don't see him finishing Guram, but I mean, again,
that's a good point.
You don't want to get cute for a plus 500, I guess, but I guess depending on the number of the split prop and decision. So yeah.
Moving on, we have a fucking weird fight here. We got Alexander Romanov taking on Blagoy Ivanov. Romanov minus 135, comeback on Ivanov plus 115. I'm a bit out of sorts with this. Like you and I were just talking about this before we got on the pod. Yep. Like there's a part of me, I've wanted to fade Romanov from day one, which I more or less did until I cashed with Tybura. But then I turned around and bet him at evens against Volkov in his last fight, which was obviously horrendous. Like one of the worst bets of the year. But I look at like this fight and, you know, my initial instinct was I want to fade Romanov again to bet Blagoy. But you look at these guys, and like Blagoy's old, man. He's 36 years old. You know, one fight ago, I bet him against Tybura, and he was competitive with Tybura until he got taken down in round 3 and then couldn't get off his back. And I would say Romanov has a commensurate top game to Tybura if he gets on top. And then, so it's like, do I really want to trust Blagoy? And then you think about it from a market perspective, and it's like Romanov is being priced cheaper against Blagoy Ivanov than he was against Alexander Volkov, who's a legit top 4 or 5 heavyweight, which also throws me off. And so then my instinct's like, well, do I want to take a shot at Romanov? But it's just like, man, look at this fucking guy. His last fight between the Tybura fight and the Volkov fight, that was a 7-month break. He gained 26 pounds. The dude clearly showed up fat and out of shape. He gassed out. Look, we know Romanov's got bad gas. But he gassed out a minute and a half into the fight. Like he pretty much quit. Like he couldn't get a takedown, got hit in the face once, and then just shot a low single and just kind of covered up. You know, I've never seen anything like that. So it's like, as much as I think the market is maybe overcorrecting here a bit, I can't trust fucking Romanov. You know, even if he shows up on the scales in shape, I'm not laying juice with a guy who just, you know, bowed out that quickly in his last fight. So ultimately, I think, I mean, there's not really an angle I'm looking to play here. The angle I'd be looking to play is potentially take Blagoy live, I guess. Maybe the one thing I have thought of is like, you know, given how bad some of those shots Romanov was taking against Volkov were, you know, Blagoy does have a good 10-finger guillotine. You know, maybe he gets in a little too low and gets guillotined, especially if he's tired. Like Blagoy subs like plus 650. I don't think that's a horrible look, but I think this fight's a car crash. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this fight's a pass all around. To me, I just think I'm giving more stock to Romanov just because Blagoy is much slower. The athletic gap, even though, you know, Romanov is fat, this and that, like the size and the athleticism for Romanov, I think he could just win the first 2 rounds just on sheer size, landing takedowns. I mean, definitely there. Just a pass for me overall. I was hoping for a decent over 1.5, but it was like minus 185 when that came out. So
yeah, I mean, fair enough. I saw it's minus 200, and I actually don't even think that's necessarily horrible. But also, if we get Romanov in the form he was in last fight, it's like we're both going to want to just hang ourselves and not watch the rest of the card if we play minus 200.
Or if he just goes super aggro and just absolutely just pounds him out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess that's way less likely, but yeah.
I mean, he's going to try to go aggro. That's going to happen. I think you're right about that. It's what degree of success does he have doing that?
Right.
And we'll see. Moving on, though, I'll throw it to you. Weird fight. I don't know why Joe Henderson Brito can't get a fight against someone good, but he's fighting Weston Wilson. The price is comical here. Like, let's see, where are we right now? We're up to minus 1100 Brito. Come back on Wilson plus 800. Any thoughts? Anything to throw in here?
Yeah, you want to talk about a degree of success growing aggro. I think Brito is going to have a lot of success going aggro. What's interesting to me, though, is I mentioned it a little bit earlier, too. I think the sub price is interesting here. It's like plus 200, and I feel like yes, Wilson, 100%. He's there to be cracked on the feet. He's got really no striking defense, no striking at all. But I think if Brito was smart here, probably just take him down, get the back, rear naked choke him, round one, it's over. Like I think this goes under 1.5, and I like the sub price at like 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. And Wilson's gotten subbed a bunch. Yeah, I don't have a lot to add here. I mean, Wilson's a karate guy. He actually seems like a reasonably fun fighter.
Yeah, he'll have fun fights, but he's not. I don't think he's very skilled.
He'll have fun fights if they make fun fights for him, you know? He's not, I agree with you. Like, his style is fun, like that karate style, but he's not very good. He lacks physicality for the UFC. He lacks defense in all realms. Yeah, I mean, look, Brito's minus 1,100 for a reason. I'm with you. I think he finishes him fairly easy. It's really going to be dealer's choice for him, whether or not he wants to KO him or sub him in all likelihood. So,
and I just think more so like the sub should be close. Like I thought it was going to be closer to like that even money or even like slight juice, and we're getting like plus 200. So it's like, people are steaming the KO, and I understand why. Super hittable, but I think the sub is way more loud than the KO personally.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'll keep with you here. We got Luana Carolina taking on Ivana Petrovic. Petrovic chalked up a bit here. What's the current line? Hold on. Dude, why is fight odds all over the place? Petrovic minus 220, Carolina plus 185. What are your thoughts?
You know, it's an ugly spot for sure. It's greasy. You know, maybe you don't want to have your money on it, but I think it's a spot you got to have money on. The one Carolina plus 185. I have him for a unit. I think she's a better striker of the two if this stays standing. Obviously, the big threat is Petrovic grappling. I don't think her wrestling's anything that good. She's obviously, like you touched on, 6-0. Hasn't really fought anybody that good. I mean, the fight is largely dependent on if she gets it to the ground. Because, I mean, Carolina, once she's on her back, I mean, the fight definitely 100% could be over, but takedown defense is okay, decent enough. And like I said, I think it's 50-50, if not favoring Carolina on the volume on the feet. So plus 185, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'm going to eventually deploy on Carolina as well. I'm with you. There's just like, there are certain fights where it's almost like the tape doesn't even matter. And by that, I mean the gap in competition and experience is just so vast that it doesn't really matter if someone looks better on tape because the person they're fighting would look just as good against them. And that's one of these fights here. You know, Ivana Petrovic, she's 6-0. Her only decent win is Evelina Wozniak, who's not even really that good, if we're being honest. Prior to that, she was fighting competitive-ish with a 2-0 fighter in a championship fight. Went to a split with Marta Wallachek, who's 5-4 and now under 500. Or was 5-4 when they fought. To me, you know, I know you mentioned, you know, it could be 50-50-ish on the feet. And, you know, I've heard someone else say that as well. I really don't believe that. You know, I agree, and I see the angle from tape why that would be, you know, the conclusion that one would come to here. But, I mean, Carolina, whether you agree with the decision or not, just went to a split decision standing with Joanna Calderwood, who was like legit one of the best 5 to 10 strikers in the division. You know, yeah, I thought split was kind of crazy, but she landed 107 strikes in that fight. This chick is going to split decisions with absolute dog shit in like the very recent past, like in the last year. And so it's like, I don't really care if her technique looks better or the same level as Carolina. To me, that's meaningless. Like when people tell me, oh, you know, do the tape. It's like, yeah, we all do the fucking tape. But also you have to have some concept of someone who was just in there having a close striking fight with Joanna Calderwood is probably going to be much better on the feet than someone who was just having competitive standing minutes with a 500 fighter in Aries. And so I would be very, very surprised if it's close-ish on the feet. I don't really like Petrovic's wrestling because it's mostly upper body, and that's kind of where Carolina thrives is in the clinch there. But I will say the reason it's just going to be a small play for me and not big, first of all, it's women's MMA. Like, fuck, like I should just throw my head into a blender when I bet on these fights. But the other thing, I mean, the other thing is, I think you would agree, like if Petrovic does consolidate top position, she can definitely do damage here. Like Carolina on bottom is fucking atrocious. And I actually think Petrovic is decent on top. I'm just very, very skeptical of Petrovic's ability to get the fight to that realm here. Like you said, I don't think she's a good wrestler at all. Yeah, exactly. Well, because the pricing is basically implying she's getting between 1 and 3 takedowns at a very, very high clip.
And she's just going to own her on the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And I actually more come down with it's more like I feel like you could project maybe 1 takedown based on what I've seen. Like obviously she could outperform that and land 2, 3, 4 takedowns.
Yeah.
But I feel based on the available tape and the available tape of Carolina, it's very difficult to project her to land more than one pre. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's under that amount. So
yeah, the last
Go
thing
for
for me I'll add on that is that I just feel like if like absolute worst case scenario, Petrovic is probably like covering her line, like minus 225, minus 250 ish. Whereas like best case scenario, Carolina's probably slight favorite here.
Yeah, I maybe even more than slight favorite. If
Yeah.
Petrovic can't get her down easy. Now, I will say I don't think Carolina has the minute separation ability to ever be like -2, -300.
Right.
But I could see her, solidly out voluming on the feet,
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Moving on, though, next fight of the night, we got Yana Santos taking on Karol Rosa. I don't really have a strong feeling here. I guess I lean Rosa on on standing physicality. Like, obviously, she throws a lot of volume, reasonable hitter for a female fighter, versus Yana, who I don't think is unskilled. Like, I think Yana's a fairly skilled fighter, but she's a woman who is one of the few women who seems to have a bad chin. We've seen her rocked a number of occasions. We've seen her put outstanding a couple times, which is fairly rare in WMMA, against someone in Rosa who's just going to bring more volume and hits harder. I think so. It's like, I think if they're standing at distance, I think Rosa should throw more volume and likely connect with the bigger shots and maybe hurt her. But I can't deploy on Rosa here just because I think Yana is very strong. And I would not be at all surprised here to see them get into like a gross clinchy battle. Like, we literally just saw Rosa get dragged into this fight with Norma Dumont in her last fight and lose that fight that way. Now, you can argue whether or not she deserved to lose the fight, but that is what happened. And Yana excels in those kind of dirty fights, on top of which, like, if Yana drags her down from that position, Rosa's bottom game is fairly poor. And I could see Yana controlling her on the mat. So while I think Rosa having like significant finishing equity makes it very hard to play Yana at plus 130, because it's like, if that's the case, you can't really price Yana a favorite or even pick him if Rosa's got a lot more finishing equity. And I think it's fairly clear she does. But at the same time, I think there are enough holes and leaks in Rosa's game, in particular because it's a short notice fight against someone in Yana who has good cardio and who will push that kind of, grindy, clinchy pace on her. You can't bet Rosa here. It's a pass. I lean Rosa. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty similar to you. The only real thing I'll add is like I don't like 145 pounds for Karol Rosa either.
Yeah.
And so
I fought there early in her career.
Yep. And I think similar to, what we were talking about pre-pod here last week, Phil Rowe got dragged into the Magniverse. Karol Rosa could get dragged into the Yanaverse here. Could happen.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's, again, another gross fight. I'm fine passing.
Yeah, moving on. We got Kevin Lee taking on Rinat Fakhretdinov. Fakhretdinov current price is -190. Comeback on Lee plus 165. Kind of interesting because I initially picked off some Lee at plus 186 just because, I've been vocal on this pod about not really thinking that highly of Fakhretdinov's wrestling versus what the rest of the market thinks about it. And so I saw the line. I saw the line was coming in. It's like, I'm going to grab it. Then I heard a couple people I respect make fairly convincing Rinat cases. And last night I was like, I might cash out, but you know what? I should probably do a deeper dive into this. So I looked a bit deeper, and ultimately what I ended up doing was adding more money on Lee here. Yeah, I'm not saying it's like the most passionate take I've ever had in the world. I have 2 units on Lee, like I think plus 172 and plus 186. But I know I've said this before each of his last 2 fights. I bet Michailidis poorly against him. I did not bet battle against him. I bet the over there. Got by the skin of my teeth. But I really think Fakhretdinov's best strength is his strength. Like, as a technical wrestler, I don't actually think he's that good. And, you look at his last 2 fights. Well, I mean, Michailidis is a cardio bum who basically, if he can't hurt you or compromise you early, just basically has no chance to win. And Brian Battle just can't defend takedowns. When I look at it in the context of this fight, it's like, this line obviously is in part a product of those fights. But what would Kevin Lee do to Andreas Michailidis or Brian Battle? I would argue he would do them way worse. He'd probably finish both of them because Lee is a fairly decent finisher from top position. So I kind of feel like that's something that's not really being considered by the market. I think what is being considered by the market and why I kind of disagree with the line, people betting Renat are like, oh, there's such a huge cardio discrepancy. And it's like, well, are you really getting an edge against the books because of a cardio discrepancy though? Like everybody knows about Kevin Lee's cardio. Literally every single person knows about that. If you're making a bet based on cardio, that is 100% already priced into the line. What I would ask in return to that is though, have you watched much of Renat's regional tape? I will say his cardio looked a bit better in his last 2 fights, but dude, this guy's cardio looked sketch as fuck when he was on the Russian regionals. The 2 or 3 times guys actually pushed him past a couple minutes, he was not collapsing, but slowed down like crazy. And so I actually think I would still favor, I guess, Renat on cardio just because he did show, a bit better cardio in his last 2 fights. But at the same time, guys tend to show good cardio when they're being a good hammer. I mean, look at Lee, for example. Guy went out there, went 5 hard rounds, Edson Barbosa, smashing him the whole time. Looked the same in round 5 he did in round 1. Why? Because he received almost 0 resistance. It's very, very easy to grapple aggressively when you're not facing much off bottom. In the context of this fight, though, I don't think Renat's a better wrestler than Kevin Lee. I do think he could get takedowns here, but I don't think he can control Lee, and I think scrambles are going to be hard and fast in this fight. I think Renat is very vulnerable to giving his back up here. We saw Michailidis get to his back fairly quickly. He got Renat down once, gave his back up, and something I noticed I thought was interesting is he didn't really get his elbow down and try to protect hooks at all. And Lee, the last time he fought at 170, we saw him fighting RDA coming right off the Covington fight. So it was RDA in fairly good form. And we saw RDA get 4 takedowns in that fight, but Lee consistently reversed and kind of counter grapple him. Like he got to Dos Anjos' back twice. So that's a place where I think Lee can actually counter grapple here, like consistently. My real question with Kevin Lee is just, what does his body have left to give at this point? Obviously, he's had a number of serious injuries, but and because like if you were telling me for a fact I was getting the Kevin Lee from the RDA fight, I would make him like minus 200 in this fight. I'm not even kidding. I think he's like if you guys put these guys in singlets, Lee would beat Renat. Put them in gis, Lee would beat Renat. The best argument here is just Renat's a strong bully who can push Kevin Lee around and out cardio him. But I just think the argument kind of falls flat when you consider Renat's cardio hasn't been the best in his career. We saw Michailidis counter grapple him a bit. Dude, I saw this guy get counter grappled by a 1-2 fighter in 2018 who he was just getting fed to. So, yeah, I mean, Lee's fought much, much better competition. He's got better grappling credentials. And, when you think about this fight, I think the logical thought process would be Renat's more likely of the two to make improvements, except Renat's 31. He's actually older than Lee is. Lee spent the last year training at Killcliff. He's posted videos about it, but I mean, he's been training with Usman and Jason Jackson. Like his main sparring partner for the last 6 months has been Gilbert Burns. Like he's only 30 years old. I actually think there's a decent amount of improvement upside with Lee. And so I just look at the fight and it's like, how often are you really, is the line actually right when you have someone like Renat, whose 2 best wins of his career are Andreas Michailidis and Brian Battle, fighting somebody who also does what he does well, but who has also fought a significantly higher level of competition and beaten a significantly higher level of competition in his career in the manner Kevin Lee has. I don't think that often. I kind of think Lee has to be the side. Something I keep thinking about is this could look a lot like the Emers Ashkabov fight, where everybody was like, oh, the Russian who grapples, who had fought nobody, who then just got dumpstered by the really good American grappler. That's what Lee is. And the real question here is going to be cardio. But I do think it's kind of, again, just circling back one last time, it's kind of comedy that people are painting Renat like this Colby Covington-esque, like cardio grappler. Like, why? Because he held down Brian Battle? Brian Battle's takedown defense is 38%. Why? Because he outgrappled Andreas Michailidis, who's literally got the worst cardio in the history of the UFC. Like, you can talk to me all day about Kevin Lee's cardio. The guy's 8-3 in decisions in his career. I think it's nuts. I think the line's kind of nuts. I kind of think, look, would I be shocked if Renat did out cardio him? Not one bit. I really wouldn't be. But I think when you're trying to think about uncertainty here, give me the more skilled fighter who's more experienced also, who's fought way better fighters, who's beaten way better fighters, over the guy who the best thing you can say about him is he's strong and he might be able to out cardio him. Yeah, I mean, I have 2 units on Lee here all day. What do you think?
I'll pick it up really where you left it off on the Fakhretdinov side. I don't think if you're betting on that side, like there's no value you really have. Like, again, like you talked about with the cardio, it's already baked into the line, really. Yeah. But I do fall more so along that side. I do think that, the first round for sure, Lee's going to give him hell. But I do feel like second and third round, I think that grappling, that onslaught, I do think eventually gets to Kevin. But
well, let me ask you this though: like, what do you think happens if Lee gets on top? Like, we haven't really seen Fakhretdinov on bottom. Like, we do know he trains at the same gym that Damir does, and we're going to talk about Damir's bottom game in a little bit. But
yeah, I think. I know we talked about this a little bit before, but I like the over 2.5 here, if anything. That's not bad.
I bet that as well, actually. Minus 135. So,
yep.
So if we're not KO's Kevin Lee in round one, I will be sick.
I was gonna say that's exactly what's gonna happen. First round, like minute in, Kevin's just gonna eat one. But no, I like the over.
I actually sort of do think if Renat's gonna finish him, that's probably how it's gonna be. Honestly, like I'd be a little. He's been sub before, but the guys that have subbed Lee are mostly like very high level jiu-jitsu guys. I think Renat hits pretty hard, and Kevin's got very poor standing defense. Like, I kind of think that if he's going to finish him, it would be like a stupid standing KO, So we'll see what happens, though. War Kevin.
We will.
One last time into the breach with Kevin Lee. We'll see how it goes. Moving on. We have a Sorry, not retarded. Don't say that. We have a ridiculous fight here. Nursultan Ruziboyev taking on Bruno Ferreira. The odds on this fight, Bruno Ferreira minus 185, Ruziboyev plus 160. Any thoughts here, Legs?
Yeah, this is a ridiculous fight, kind of like what you said. I mean, I expect this fight to be chaos. I think Ferreira probably knocks him out. I think Ruziboyev standing. I mean, he hits hard for sure, but like the volume's not there, striking defense not there. I mean, this guy to me seems like a bit of a meme, really. I don't really understand why this fight's happening, but I think Bruno does knock him out. I will say this though, with the under 1.5 as juiced as it is, I do feel like Bruno could just like grapple him. Like, I think we could see like a second round. Like, this could just be like avoiding the damage, trying to land takedowns there. So yeah.
You know what really sucks about this kind of fight? So like, I agree with most of what you said. I don't think Ruziboyev is, I agree. It's kind of a meme. You look at most of his tape against pretty bad competition, and this guy is losing until he's not losing. But then I look at Bruno Ferreira and I'm like, is he any less of a meme? Like, I guess he somewhat competed with Rod on minutes in his last fight before he knocked him out. But dude, Bruno Ferreira has been out of the first round, once in his entire career? I really want to fade Bruno Ferreira in the worst possible way. I don't think he's got good defense. I'm not sold on his chin. I'm not sold on his gas. I still think that RoboCop knockout was fucking bullshit.
That was good. I've watched when I was doing tape this week. I think I've watched it like 5 times. He literally has his hand and then it just drops him, and then he just gets clawed. Absolutely.
I laid like minus 280 on RoboCop in that fight. It was not pretty. But I don't like. I'm really hoping Bruno wins because I can't bet Bruno at minus 185 here. I think he's going to knock him out early, but I don't trust his cardio enough that if he doesn't, like, I don't really want to have juice on Bruno Ferreira, especially against an unknown, but that unknown also has 40 fights, like 4x more experience than he does. He should win. Ruziboyev's terrible. Like, he really should. I am not putting my money on Bruno Ferreira at 65% implied. Like, if we're betting someone at those kind of implied odds, I want to know that they have either a huge grappling edge or I think
he kind of does, but maybe not huge. But I think he can stay safe on top here, no issue, and not getting.
He might, but this isn't like Sabatini Almeida from a couple weeks ago, And even striking, it's like, yeah, he should have a striking edge. But I want a guy, if I'm going to lay juice on him, a guy who doesn't get hit very often, which I cannot say about Bruno.
That's fair.
So yeah, he should dumpster here. If you bet his early numbers are like pick, I'd probably bet him at pick. But I have really no interest in this line. I just hope he knocks him out in the first round and kind of preserves the fade. Like, there's nothing more heartbreaking than a guy you have the bullseye on going down in a spot where you didn't take the other side of it. So hopefully Bruno cruises here. We'll see what happens. Moving on, banger fight here though. Benoit Saint-Denis taking on Ismail Bonfim. Bonfim is chalked up like crazy. Minus 310. Come back on Saint-Denis plus 260. I don't really know what to do with this because it's so binary and a lot. Like, the thing is, I don't really think, at least early, that Saint-Denis has much chance to even hold Bonfim down if you can get him down. What I'm unsure of, though, is what Bonfim's takedown defense is really like. To me, it looks good from the little available footage there is, but it's all against like very poor grapplers who aren't very physical trying to take him down. And now he's going the opposite direction, and he's taking on a guy in Saint-Denis who, while Saint-Denis technically is a mess, the guy is just all physicality, cardio, and brute force. And I could, it's not hard to imagine Saint-Denis, landing 3, 4, 5, 6 takedowns until Bonfim eventually tires out and then breaking him. So you might be asking, why haven't I bet Benoit Saint-Denis?
This is a classic John spot, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I just feel like I think Bonfim can win a fight where he gets taken down a bunch of times and keeps getting up. I do not think Saint-Denis can win a fight where he's in space for 7 or 8 minutes. And if he's in space the entire fight, I think he's probably going to get finished here. I actually think I do not rate the older Bonfim like whatsoever, but I actually think Ismail is a decent prospect. I'm really struggling to put like a number on this because it's like, that's the name of the game. You've got Saint-Denis at like 28% implied, but how much does the uncertainty of Bonfim's takedown defense play into this? Like, I bet Nicholas Stolze against Saint-Denis, who is not like a great defensive wrestler, but I haven't been overtly impressed with Saint-Denis wrestling, but then he buried him. And so I just don't have a great feel for it. My gut is Saint-Denis is the side, but when you're talking about the kind of fight that in retrospect, he could be plus 500 or minus 150. It's like, do you really want to just because he's plus 260, do you want to take the stab? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I feel like you definitely hit it on the nail there at the end there with like, he could look like a great value, or it just could look like an absolute shit bet. Bonfim stuffs the early takedowns. He just gets his ass beat. And that's the thing too. I was actually like, pre-tape. I was like, all right, over 1.5, like minus 180. Like, all right, it's going to be a lot of grappling and snap. And I'm like, if this is at space for any extended period, I mean, Bonfim is going to probably finish him. So.
And I kind of suspect that like, Saint-Denis' durability might be getting a little overrated off of the Zaleski
fight. Yeah.
Where it's like, he didn't die, but the fight should have literally been stopped 5 sets. Like any normal UFC referee stops that fight at 5 different points. So it's like, do we want to give the guy credit for being able to absorb an absurd amount of brain damage and keep his body like moving around like a chicken with its head cut off? Or do we want to acknowledge the fact that the guy got hurt badly 4 separate times in that fight and most referees would stop it?
I mean, I have my fair share of like bitching about like bad beats, this and that. But I mean, that I had the under 2.5 there. I mean,
that was horrible.
I mean, that's one of the worst.
What do you think about doesn't go? I mean, minus 170, like that's not horrible.
Yeah. I don't know.
Not bad.
I know. I'm just trying to think. I'm like, is there a path where Saint-Denis just grapple? Like, I'm just saying, if he does end up getting takedowns, landing that, is there a path where he just rides him out, goes the distance? I think that's very plausible.
If he wins, yeah.
Right. If he wins, but yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, if Bonfim's actually minus 310, I feel like N's ITD should be a bit wider.
I guess where I would say, I would rather touch the Bonfim ITD, I guess, than the fight ITD. But I guess I would have to see the price.
What is the Bonfim ITD? It is, where is your minus 105? That's actually, I mean, considering where he's priced, that's actually not horrible. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I would target it.
Anyway, moving on. Throw it to you first. Ariane Lipsky taking on Melissa Gatto. Gatto, pretty big favorite here, minus 230. Comeback on Lipsky, plus 195. What are your thoughts?
It's a weird fight, and it's one where I feel like I want to bet Lipsky, but if I bet Lipsky, she's going to get taken down within like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, and I'm going to, hate myself. But yeah, I feel like on the feet, Lipsky's a better striker. I feel like definitely can crack Gatto on the feet, but Gatto has decent takedowns. I mean, she showed decent takedowns in the Cortez fight herself. I think Lipsky's shit on bottom. I mean, getting, grapple fucked by Antonina Shevchenko is just such a fucking horrible look in hindsight. So it's a pass for me, but I understand the early Gatto love here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like if you got in like Gatto sub minus 180, that's a pretty good bet. I even kind of think the line could be wider where it is, but I am not laying minus 230 on a WMMA favorite. It's just never happening. Unless it's like Amanda Nunes or Tatiana Suarez. It is like never happening. But yeah, I guess for me, I kind of think without the Aldrich fight, Gatto is probably priced in the same neighborhood that Aldrich is, like minus 400, minus 500 range. And I think on the feet, it's competitive. I felt like Lipsky's leveled up a little bit standing in recent, fights. Obviously, she looked very good there against Aldrich. Her takedown defense looked okay. But at the end of the day, Aldrich tends to be a very confidence-based fighter, and she's also just not a very good wrestler. And you can see Lipsky's also a confidence-based fighter. Once she realized she could tag her, she started getting more and more aggressive as that fight went on. Whereas Gatto, I think, is just an absolute savage. She, even if she's losing the stand-up, she is going to bring it all fight to Lipsky. And it's something we've seen Lipsky struggle very badly with, like superior physicality and especially superior aggression. Like think back to the Cachoeira fight and how that went. And then you touched on the grappling. Like I don't think Gatto is the best wrestler ever, but I also don't think she's bad. I do worry about when she gets stuck on bottom and she plays guard, but I feel like if Lipsky got on top of her here, there's a pretty good chance Lipsky gets subbed there. Her not subbing Sijara Eubanks or Tracy Cortez tells me nothing. Like they would absolutely maul Ariane Lipsky. And I feel like Gatto, to me at least, she seems very, very strong for the division. But physically, like I don't think she's the best wrestler, but I don't really think she needs to be. And as you touched on, we've seen Lipsky get finished on the mat enough times now that if you tell me one takedown happens, I'm like, there's probably a 30 to 35% chance the fight's over right there. And it's almost certainly around. So yeah, I mean, I think Gatto like 75%, maybe even higher makes sense. I would never advocate for a bet that high in women's MMA, but I think those early Gatto numbers were really strong.
I think N's ITD is pretty decent too. I think it's like minus 110 if I'm not mistaken.
Is that what is it? Minus 110 to end ITD?
Yeah, like the fight.
I feel like that's like a bit under is plus 110, which isn't. So what are Gatto finish lines here? Gatto sub plus 300 seems kind of generous, honestly. I know Lipsky's been finished by ground and pound. Yeah, I know Lipsky's been finished by ground and pound a couple times, but like I'm figuring is the market just thinking, oh, she's gotten finished by ground and pound, everyone's gonna do it. Like I think if Gatto gets on top of her, she's gonna fuck her up, but she's gonna hunt submissions. Like we know that. So I actually don't think that's a bad look at all. I'm probably gonna play that. Moving on though, Max Payne Griffin taking on Michael Morales. And Christ, this is like a weird fight. I have one bet on this so far, and I might make a second. I bet the under for a unit at plus 125. I'm considering poking Griffin. The thing that I can't really get a beat on with Morales is Morales strikes me as one of those guys that's like, when you get like a freshman coming out of like college basketball to the pros and he gets drafted in the top 8 and everybody knows he's not going to have a huge impact early, but his athleticism just off the charts. Like that's kind of like what Michael Morales is to me. Like I feel like when you tape him, he has all these disparate parts that don't really make sense. And at the moment of his last fight won't translate up to the higher level, but also Morales' athleticism is off the charts. He's a huge hitter and he's 23 years old. I feel like, and we haven't seen him for about a year. So I feel like it's fair to assume Morales is going to make like large improvements from 22 to 23 and 23 to 24 and so on and so forth. The thing is, and so this is what I'm trying to square, is Max Griffin on tape, I think is the more skilled fighter. His boxing's a bit more functional. He's got a good jab. He's got a good 1-2. He's defensively more sound, and that bears out in the statistics too, like significantly so. He should be able to hammer leg kicks here against Morales. But there's a couple things that worry me on the Griffin side. First of all, we have seen his cardio wane at times, a number of times throughout his career, later in fights. Second of all, the guy's 37 years old. So it's like Morales, I'm expecting Michael Morales to only get better. And eventually, if his skill matches his athleticism, be near the top of this division. I don't think he's anywhere near that now, but I'm expecting him to be better. Whereas Max Griffin's 37, and not only is he 37, but Tim Means is a corpse at this point. We know that. I did bet him in his last fight. Shoot me in the face. But Tim Means is he's an old man. Like, we know that's the case. And Griffin went life and death with him in their last fight. And that's a little worrying for me. Like, to me, it's indicative of Griffin potentially starting to decline here. So it's like you have Griffin at 37 declining versus Morales at 22, who's getting better and is a physical freak. And then on the other side, like I feel like the tape is somewhat favorable to Griffin here. And so I'm really torn about what to do because I feel like if you told me Griffin looked minus 150 in retrospect, I won't be shocked. But also, if you tell me Griffin goes over the cliff or Morales just levels up enough to look like a huge favorite, I won't be shocked either. So I'm kind of holding out, hoping the Griffin line keeps moving up. I might take a small poke at him, but I like the under though because Morales is very hittable, and we've seen him hurt in the UFC. You know, Fugit was touching him up for a bit. Giles hurt him, and obviously Morales hits very hard himself. So I like under, lean to Griffin. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the line's more or less fine. Like you touched on a little bit of points on the Griffin side. Cardio not great. He's getting up there in age. I don't think his durability is the greatest either. I mean, you talked about just the Tim Means fight. Guy was owning him for the most part in the first round, and then volume kind of just falls off a cliff. Cardio kind of just falls off a cliff a little bit. And then it's like, again, like you touched on, 50-50 fight with Tim Means. So I think the under is a great spot. I think Morales probably does find the knockout.
Yeah, fair enough. Did you take the under?
No, but I probably will actually. I honestly didn't see that price.
You better join me. Moving on, we got Damir Ismagulov taking on Grant Dawson. This is my biggest bet on the card. I'm fairly large on Dawson in like the plus 125 to 130 range. I actually think there's still some value on him here. I understand, I guess, the takes on the Ismagulov side of things being that, especially because generally the macro factors here are not something I normally like to fade. You know, the guy with more experience who's fought better competition is not a guy I really ever like to fade. But with respect to this fight, I think the market is not picking up on, or is too much saying that Arman is a much, much better grappler than Grant Dawson, when in reality, I think it's actually fairly close. I think Arman's more physically stronger than Dawson is, but as a pure offensive wrestler, I think they're similar. And in terms of control grappling, I mean, Dawson's superior. You know, when Dawson gets on top of guys, they don't get up, you know, whereas, you know, Arman's a very good wrestler and he'll keep pushing it, but you can get up against Arman. You know, we've seen, you know, good fighters get up against him, whereas Dawson, you try to give your back up, and, you know, not only is he a top level wrestler, he's also a top level jiu-jitsu player, and he's on it right away. And with Ismagulov, we have seen just about every time Arman took him down, he would not give he would give his back up to try to get up there. And I think he's going to need to do that to get up against Grant if Grant takes him down here, which to me, if he gives his back up to Grant, he's just going to get mauled and smashed here. Obviously, if Ismagulov can keep this fight standing for 15 minutes, I would think he wins fairly handily. Grant's not a great striker. He is there to be hit. But I think something that kind of gets lost, because we've kind of dealt with spots like this a few times recently over the last couple months, where people like look at how a grappler fights standing and they just kind of extrapolate that out to the rest of their game. Like Tim Elliott a couple weeks back, Pat Sabatini a couple weeks back, where it's like, yeah, some of these guys are bad strikers, but they're so good at grappling, it doesn't really matter as long as they minimize exchanges. And Dawson, for much of his career, has done that. You know, I keep seeing people referencing the Michael Trezano fight and how Trezano jabbed him up. And it's like, well, guys, he was 24 years old when that fight happened. That fight was 5 years ago. You know, yeah, he's gotten clipped a couple times here and there. Yeah, some people talk about Madsen, you know, wobbled him on the feet. He did. Mark Madsen is an Olympic wrestler who's known for strength, and Dawson fucking buried the guy. Like, absolutely, like ragdolled him that entire fight. You know, outside of round 3 of the Rick Glenn fight, I don't think Dawson's lost the unanimous round his entire career. And so you're talking about a guy in Dawson who was an elite round winner, an elite wrestler, and an elite submission grappler, taking a guy in Damir who I think does have good first level takedown defense. But when you get him down, first of all, I don't think he responds to single legs well. We saw that against Arman. He didn't really seem to know how to limp leg out of them. But then when you give this guy down, his only real way to get up is to give his back. I think it's a tailor-made spot for Dawson, to be quite honest. I think Dawson's still on the rise. And the reason I'm willing to kind of fade the macro here is I think Dawson's a special prospect who, again, who's lost one round in his entire career here. And on top of that, Ismagulov, after he lost to Arman in January, literally announced his retirement for health reasons. Like, this happened. Said he could not physically continue to perform. Now is coming back to finish his contract. I don't know, man. ATT knows what they're doing here. I love Dawson here. I think the line, I think you can't go past minus 150 on the Dawson side, just because, you know, Ismagulov's not a bad grappler, and if he does keep it upright, he's going to win. But on the other side, I think every other aspect of the fight from a technical perspective favors Dawson. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, so I think those early plus numbers definitely can't be wrong on the Dawson side, but I do think more so like again on like more like the pick'em side, like just because if it does stay standing, I think Damir lights him up. But conversely,
Yeah.
I mean, Dawson gets him down, it should be a wash on the mat. So yeah, I do think Dawson like minus 125, minus 130 is more so accurate. So anybody on that early plus numbers I get, but at pick 'em right now, I'm not super willing to jump in on it.
One other thing to add though, so like I agree with. I mean, obviously he will
Yeah.
hit Dawson on the feet, but
Right.
and if Damir had real stopping power, I wouldn't be betting Dawson as big as I am. The thing is, the guy hasn't finished a guy in 6 years, and the last guy he finished was a regional bum. He has one knockdown in the UFC. You know, it's not like if Damir was a real dangerous power threat, I'd be avoiding it, but I don't think he is. And if that's the case, he's basically got to shut down Grant's wrestling, which I can't see him doing for 15 minutes. So we'll see what happens.
Alrighty.
Moving on though, Sean Strickland, Abus Magomedov. Abus taking some steam. Although, did this line move out?
I think it's minus 150, Sean.
Roughly. Yeah. So we got Strickland minus 146. Comeback on Abus Magomedov is about plus 125. Any thoughts or legs?
Well, first starters, for Abus, we'll call him the Bus. How about that? Nickname the Bus.
The Bus, Jerome Bettis.
Yeah, Jerome Bettis, but he's not quite there. I don't think he'll ever quite be there. I think it's a good spot.
Well, he's white.
Spot. Yeah, well, that too. I meant more so the status, but yeah. Sean smokes him. Honestly, I for me, Abus, it's finishing upside probably like first, second round. If he doesn't finish Sean early, like I don't see how he competes on volume. I don't think his wrestling's that good. He's beaten a bunch of okay guys. Again, we talked about it before the pod a little bit. Saint-Denis is probably his best win. It's an older Saint-Denis. I think Sean jabs him up on the feet. I think the volume's crazy. I like Sean a good way here. So yeah, I would play on Sean for sure.
I'm like very, very, you and I chatted about this for a bit before we came on. I'm with you, and I might end up betting Sean. I just, something that's frustrating me, and the reason I haven't bet it yet is like I don't really know what to make about this, honestly. I was hoping, if nothing else, the Stoltzfus fight would give us like a solid 10 to 15 minutes of data to be able to kind of understand. But the fight ended so quickly, there was really nothing to draw from that. And if you go back, past the Stoltzfus fight, he fought, Kasich in KSW. Not very good. Guillotined him early in that fight. I don't really care. Before that, he fought an 0-0 bum. And then you got to go back to 2018 for his last fight before that, where he got knocked out by 40-year-old Lewis Taylor in the PFL. And to your point, the fight before that was Saint-Denis. And even Saint-Denis is not bad. For PFL, he's very good. Saint-Denis would not be an upper echelon fighter in the UFC. Just a stone cold reality here. And that version of Saint-Denis 5-6 years ago was much different than the version today. And so I feel what's making me nervous is I don't see a lot to justify this price, which concerns me because someone somewhere is putting down money that books respect that think that this price is too wide on the Strickland end of things.
Maybe I was going to add, maybe just because they think he's just kind of vanilla, and maybe that's why I'm so more so like just holding off on that bet. But like, I'm seeing it at like minus 140 now. It opened like minus 175, minus 180. Like Sean has a better strength schedule here, volume.
Is there any reason to think this guy can go 25 minutes with Strickland? Like, I don't see it.
Let me pull something up real quick.
I have his schedule up right now. I mean, I taped him. I don't really see what.
No, I was trying to pull up old odds here. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of my point. Like, Strickland is an elite cardio guy for the division, has elite output for the division, is a fairly strong defensive grappler with a good get-up game. Magomedov's never been out of round 3 in his career. He's pretty much spent most of his career finishing bums. Like, I look at the fight, and I don't think Strickland's got any durability problems. You saw him take Jared shots, pretty much no problem. He got knocked out by Ferreira, but Ferreira is one of the biggest hitters in the division's history, and that was just a flush counter shot. I I look at it and my head intuitively is like Strickland should be in the minus 200 to minus 230 range. To me, 67, 70%, that makes sense. And you allow enough room of uncertainty on the Magomedov side that maybe he outperforms. But I don't understand the line. At least with a lot of these other fights, I can, even if I'm on the other side, I can understand the thought process going into it. I cannot understand the thought process on the Abus side, which scares the shit out of me. Have you bet it?
No, I was going to say I'm going to bet Sean.
Yeah.
I mean, the line's pretty much for the most part staying still. So, yeah.
I mean, I think I'm going to too. And I do think, I think all the macro angles favor him. I think the tape favors him. I think the stats are pretty indicative that Sean's an elite striker. I trust Sean in the grappling if he does get taken down early. Yeah, I think he should be a decent sized favorite here, but I don't know. The line is pretty funky.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because, like, if we're rating his finishing potential that highly, Abus, right? The over 3.5 is minus 145. I feel like that in general. I don't know. I feel like that number's pretty good, personally.
Right, but which would be indicative of a Strickland win, in my opinion. Right, Strickland being value potentially.
So I feel like one of those numbers is off, in my opinion. Either that over 3.5 at minus 145, or Sean being only minus 145.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I'm probably going to bet Sean, though, honestly. Like, I think he's probably 4th or 5th in the division overall, and I don't really see much reason to think Maga or Abus is at that level yet, so, or will ever be at that level, frankly. So, yeah, I lean Strickland as well. Any final thoughts here?
I was going to say, I was just pulling up some odds here. I mean, Sean literally closed the dog to Ivanov. He closed plus 120.
But that was short notice, very short notice, and a month after the Cannonier fight, Like, I feel like if they had run that fight on a full camp, he's a favorite.
All right, Cannonier fight. Cannonier, Strickland closed a plus 105 dog.
Yeah.
Close fight. Went 5 rounds.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yep. You're not wrong. The market, he was even money against Brendan Allen. The market has.
He was even money against Ferreira.
Yeah. Strickland's lines have been very interesting over his time. He was only minus 200 against like Jack Marshman when he came back. So,
and he pick him. Actually, not even pick him. He was underdog to Brendan Allen.
That was amazing. That was
2 units
one of my fondest. I mean, I'm pretty sure cashing that bet only got me back to even. I'm fading Brendan Allen all time, but
that was a good one. It felt good though. That basically got all your profit back, anyways, just pure emotion.
But anyway, yeah, guys, that'll do it tonight. Thanks for coming out. We appreciate it. Again, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. Would help us out a lot. Next week, same time, we will be joined by my guy Pepe Silvia. He'll be coming on the pod. We're going to be talking Volkanovski, Rodriguez. Pretty good card. Couple interesting spots, couple potentially full sends on underdogs. So yeah, I'm excited to jump into it. Guys, as always, you can find Lags on Twitter at Danny_Lags, myself, John at MMA Fox. Good luck on your bets this weekend. Take it easy. Peace.